Children can be coached into new developmental levels and nudged into higher levels of thinking. This is happening in a 5th and 6th grade class in Worcester. To gather background information about medieval Africa, Tom Beach's students form research groups to reconstruct various African kingdoms and communicate their research in the form of murals. Subsequently, they analyze the transition to European colonization and its effects on Africans. Their intellectual discussions help them grasp not only the horrors of slavery, but also the art of argument and the importance of backing up perspectives with evidence.
In terms of their developmental level, this is a perfect age for them to go out and find as much information as they can about other peoples, the geography of the world, how it has influenced the migrations of peoples, empires, just the word empires, everybody gets excited, and where that's led to today. Before we did any cultures this year or civilizations, we worked together to try to create a kind of a definition of culture. We revisited that for this unit so we could kind of re-identify what on earth we're talking about when I say empires and cultures. The first part of the focus question is, what are these empires and cultures? What were the high points about them? And I asked the children to try to list empires and cultures in 5 regions of Africa. And then I divided the kids into 5 groups. And I said, what I want you, each of your group, to do is to do some research on these groups, divvy them up, do some research on these empires and cultures, and create a mural where you put in aspects of these empires and cultures, and then I want you to teach the rest of the class about them. They were able to bring them in and speak pretty well, I think, about that time period to the other students.
Mali was very famous for its trade routes, and so was Timbuktu. And that's really mostly why it was so famous and why Timbuktu was famous also. They really wanted the gold and the salt in Africa. They used that by trading guns because the Africans didn't have gunpowder, and they traded other things. They traded other things that the Africans would need in their life to help them with like hunting or in their daily life. And the Africans would also trade some slaves for those products.
I studied the Ashanti tribe in the medieval and Renaissance period. They had golden stools and for the king and queen, and for the really important chiefs, like one leg of the stool was golden and the rest was wooden painted. And they had sculptures and even gold on their helmets. Before the slave trade, they traded gold and ivory, and they were really powerful with that.
One of the goals I have is for the children to have a truer sense of the history of black people than I had when I was growing up. And African American, whether it be African Americans or Africans per se. I think that's very important. We saw a movie this morning called A History Denied, which gets into the issue of why it took so long for people, and people still acknowledge that black people built the great Zimbabwe. There wasn't some white civilization out there that did that. It wasn't Arab traders that came in that built the stuff along the coast. It was black Africans.
Muslims, they think, came first, but actually after they found a Muslim bottom to a church, they dug under that and there was African wood on the bottom.
My favorite this year, for me, medieval Africa, 1250 to 1800, very few pictures. But when I read this, I'm learning along with the children.
The things that surprised me about Africa back then and the Ashantis is that they did have a lot. I thought they'd be like starving to death and dying and hungry, and they weren't, because they had lots of food and fruit, and they had like markets, and they had sugar cane and ivory and gold, and they had really nice stuff. If you were rich, you'd get a lot of nice stuff.
I always worried years ago when I started doing Africa units that if we just focused on the present and what's in the news and on the that it's a pretty bleak picture. The AIDS problems, the problems with starvation, and all the things that you hear, and slavery in the Sudan. And I want them to know about this because that's really important. But on the other hand, I don't want that to be the primary thing they take out of here. I want them to have the ah about it, and I think they got that. And the second part, of course, is what was the impact of the Europeans, we particularly looked at, I guess, West Africa a lot because there was the whole focus shifts from Timbuktu to the coast when the Portuguese show up and start buying slaves. The children have also been reading a book called The Captive that talks about an Ashanti who's taken into slavery and what happens to him. They're reading the material more than once just to be familiar, and secondly with the intent to find information to support their points of view. Because this is really high stuff in terms of Bloom's hierarchy. So I really love it, and it's exciting to see the kids like it. Tim says to Joseph when they're planning to leave, "You've lost your spirit." What does he mean, and do you think that Joseph has lost his spirit?
I don't think he lost his spirit. I just think that he's, trying to be careful. He doesn't want to get beat. Okay, I think he hasn't lost his spirit, but he's just really nervous that Tim and Kofi are going to get, really seriously hurt.
I've always liked the guided reading, and I remember as years ago going to Mill River, and there was a teacher there named Coughlin that was one of my mentors there, and I watched him do these guided reading classes, and I really got excited at how he would get them jumping out of their chairs practically by picking the right question.
Then again, he's not working as hard as the others are. I don't think that's really fair.
It's not fair. Is it supposed to be fair, you think? Trying to find the right questions in the chapters where I don't have the answers. You all have very strong opinions here. I just want to make sure the book backs it up. Did you find your substantiation?
It says where it says, words grow on my tongue like the leaves in the trees. I had a new language to put my feelings in. Master Brown did not find out about our secret lessons.
What about Mrs. Brown? Why did she continue when her husband has said no more lessons?
Her life felt like she was really bossed around and she didn't have much say. And I think also she did that because she really kind of wanted to prove that she had some say in something.
And then my challenge, which I'm not really great at yet, is just staying out of the way. But I also think in these years, students or children are really putting together their own stories on a wider frame of mind. We certainly are involved very, very deeply and immediately in all parts of the world at this time. And likewise, they need to know the stories of other people and how they got to be where they are. In the 18th century, 60,000 people a year were being brought over here. What did that do to this country? Where is my piece in that? Why is it these people have not had their history in the history books? They can really connect to that. Their honesty and emotional involvement in things here cannot be minimized. The third part is now looking at today's culture. We like the hands-on approach, and that's kind of a humanities idea. You start with the artwork, play music. Every morning I try to play some music from a different place, and we kind of guess where it came from. Involve the hands. As part of the celebration of the baby, they kill a goat and have a feast. And the goat skin is here. So when they play the drum, they think of the blending of the spirits. There's certainly the spirit of the player, here's the spirit of the goat, here's the spirit of the tree. Kind of all blending into one. One of the children's books I do show the kids, and they can see that it talks about Africa, but all the pictures are really showing the medieval time that we're looking at. I'm saying, if you went there today, would it look like this? And we have to go and say, no. There are modern cities. There are people walking around with Chicago Bulls shirts on, and there's cars, and all that stuff. So it's it's a great trap to fall into the stereotypes. That's one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that we spent the end of this unit doing modern Africa, even if it's just a little travel guide.
We all made travel brochures to invite people to come to your different places, and everyone made one.
Yeah, and we wrote all these ideas like the government and the food and the money they had and stuff.
I'm hoping with the internet works here, we can all visit the embassy of each of these places and just see what's there. It might be most interesting to see what the country wants me to see about Ghana or something would be, I think, most interesting. The real culminating activity for me is what they write. A synthesis about everything and spit back a lot of details too. In whatever form they can. Today, you'll have a chance to write the answers to the focus questions. Up here, there are 3 things you'll need. This is, I've taken the focus question, I've spread it out on several pages here and give you some hints about how to write an introduction, remind you about the body with the sections where you answer the focus question and the conclusion at the end. My intention is for you to work right down there in your booths. You can wander around, look at each other's murals and things for a while, check each other's stuff. If you need a couple pieces of information, you can ask questions for maybe the first 10 or 15 minutes. And then I'll ask you to be silent for your writing. When you finish, you can finish ahead of time, you can come down here and work on other writing. If you don't finish in the next hour, I'll give you more time today to finish at a later time, so you don't have to rush. Take your time.
We have to write about 3 main ones, and I'm doing the Great Zimbabwe, the Zulus, and I'm not sure what's I might do the Killa. I'm not sure.
Right now we're just kind of brainstorming, so we talk to each other for information.
And we go up and talk to the other groups.
Yeah, and talk to the other groups so we can get help from other people to get ready to do this.
I like it better this way because you can talk and get more information from other groups, and I don't think of it as a test, I think of it as a report.
The focus questions we have known since the beginning of the unit. We knew that we would have to write an essay at the end of it, so we kind of knew what kind of notes we wanted to take, and we all took, when we watched movies, we would all take notes in our journal and do all that stuff, and we have history books, so yeah, I like this.
We have this whole level of Vermont standards, and I need to move them all along in whatever they can do. The standards are very, very difficult to master at this level. We're talking about the impact of migrations of peoples, but where can we get to in that? That's kind of an exciting challenge, I think, for the children as their minds are developing here and becoming more used to abstract reasoning. It's very exciting sometimes to see some of the connections they can make.
But it would be a bad idea because he might get caught, and then he, like they were saying, could get in a worse situation.
You should call the bazaar the culminating activity. It's kind of we've done all this, and maybe the parents are saying, so what? So we're going to show parents, community, try to open. I like to do it downtown Worcester if I could, but we'll do it in school here and try to get anybody that wants to can come here, and the children, have them just share what they've done. There'll be 5 booths set up, 5 regions, and every region will have food, have all the stuff to show them, have music, 5 kinds of music going on at the same time. It's going to be really loud and crowded and fun. What the children should take away from the unit: yes, an absolute love of Africa and history and finding out more, and doing it from, again, humanity's standpoint. What's the art? What's the music? What's the dance like? Let me try it, And I think they got this uplift about Africa, and I hope they'll want to learn more. There's nothing more important than the social studies. It is the way that these students will learn to live in this world, not in the future, but right now. Everything outside this classroom involves the social studies. And I think it's the one thing that should be central to all other disciplines.
Historical studies such as this provide students with a long view of human history and how people have been struggling with similar issues throughout time. Tom is helping students place themselves in time and make personal connections with people of the past. His students are beginning to understand the concept of culture and how it shapes people's views of the world. At a time when students are asking questions such as who am I and where do I belong, studies such as these build a solid foundation for strong identities by placing youngsters firmly within the human story.